afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled to be back for yet another TL Talks. As if you've watched this before, you know this is my favorite day of the week. It's my favorite experience of COVID, if that even exists. But without it, we wouldn't be here. So welcome to our 29th TL Talk. We have, again, an incredible panel. I hate calling it panel because it's more of like a conversation. It's like a virtual excuse for being sitting on a sofa with friends. So anyway, thank you. If you're a travel agent, if you're an IC, if you own a tour operator, if you work with restaurants or hotels, or if you're in media, thank you so much for joining us. I know that most of you watch this on demand. So if it's Saturday and you're walking in the moors, or if you're having a tea during the week, thank you again for joining. It means the world to me. We've just hit 50,000 views, which is mind-boggling. I'm completely honored by everybody coming back and being part of this community. So thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time, nice to meet you. The purpose of these TL Talks has always been to send out a wave of positive energy. That's why we're here. We want to be able to inspire, motivate, and support this industry that is so beautiful, and it's all about relationships, and make sure that everybody feels energized. So that's why we're here. If you like the content, please share. The more people we can hit with positive energy, the better we will all be. So a little bit about me. My name is Tina Lira. I am the founder of TL Portfolio, which is a PR and sales and marketing representation company. We have a powerful team of 17 women with 7 offices throughout North and South America. I am Brazilian. I grew up in Mexico. I studied in Switzerland. I have parents that are Czech and American. And then after graduation, I moved and I worked for the Hyatt in Paris, then went to New York with Mandarin Oriental and Ritz-Carlton, moved over to Singapore with the Four Seasons for about 3 years before moving to Turks and Caicos, where I am right now at the fabulous Parrot Key property, Como, in Turks and Caicos. I lived here for 4 years before heading to Miami, opening my first company, and eventually back to Brazil after about 23, 24 years, and then opened TL Portfolio in 2012. So that's a little bit about me. I am going to introduce you to this fabulous panel, and I'm going to start off with Tia Graham. And I have to start by giving a shout out to Mickey Whale for introducing us, because I found a kindred spirit. I found somebody that has pretty much as many happy genes as I do, if not more. So Tia is the founder of Arrive at Happy. She is a speaker and inspirationalist. She has worked for a dozen of global companies such as Goldman Sachs, Hilton Hotels, and Kashi to elevate the engagement and drive bottom line results. With multiple certifications in neuroscience, positive psychology, leadership coaching, and employee morale, she has supported leaders for 4 years with Arrive at Happy. Tia is also a host of the Arrive at Happy Leaders Show, available on Spotify and iTunes. And prior to running which I think is a very cool little short for the company, she led sales and marketing teams at luxury hotels in the United States and Turkey for brands such as W Hotels, Westin, and the London. She has a business degree in tourism from the University of Hawaii and is widely regarded in the corporate happiness community, and is a speaker at the annual Happiness Summit. That must be such a cool summit, to be at a happy summit. I mean, I'll go to that. Her insights have been featured in national publications such as Forbes, the Los Angeles Times, Well and Good, as well as the Yoga Journal. And Tia, it's a pleasure to have you here. I love catching up with you because you bring foundation and science into a topic that I love, and I wasn't aware of the foundation behind it. So thank you for joining us and for accepting the invite.
Of course.
Also, Andy Stein, founder and executive chairman of the Orphaned Starfish Foundation, founded in 2001 to help orphans, victims of abuse, and at-risk children worldwide escape the cycle of poverty and abuse through education and job training. From a humble beginning, building a small computer vocal training center in the orphanage, he now oversees and takes care of 15,000 children in 70 programs in 29 countries around the world. It is just unbelievable. And his collaboration with local partners in each of these countries, including Save the Children, Rotary Club, and USAID. And he makes yearly visits to each orphanage, and his works helping children at the favelas in Brazil has awarded Andy the honorary citizenship of Rio de Janeiro by the Congress. In the United States, he was also awarded the Jefferson Award for Community Service. He and the Orphaned Foundation has been featured in CBS News, Fox, ABC, El Mundo, Universal, Wall Street Journal, and the list goes on. I think, Andy, it goes without saying, the work that you've done is so inspirational. It's so beautiful. And to top it all off, that should be like at the beginning of this, you're a magician. I mean, how cool is that? So thank you again for joining us. I know you also have a very serious background. So you have worked, and you're still actually president and CEO of Mako Pastry Partners, providing senior debt and financing for luxury and ultra luxury hotels and mixed use development. So there is a very strong serious there, then a magician, and then a savior of children. So thank you for joining us. Again, I have to give a shout out to Mark Horman, who introduced us and who I'm a big fan of. So again, I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much.
Last but not least, Patrick Woodhead, who is the Chief Executive Officer of White Desert Antarctica. And I love how your bio is like, talks nothing about this amazing development, and yet has this incredible accolade of like the wildest things anybody could have done. You've been part of the youngest and fastest team to ever reach the South Pole in 2002. You went on to lead the first ever east to west traverse of Antarctica, covering 1,850 kilometers in a total of 75 days. That's insane. Outside of the polar world, Patrick has been many successful expeditions, summiting unclimbed mountains in Tibet, kayaking down uncharted rivers in the Amazon, and being part of the team that set the fastest crossing of the Atlantic Ocean. In 2005, he broke the record for the fastest traverse of Greenland. I mean, that alone, forget, White Desert, which is just mind-boggling experience in travel. This is insane. So anyway, thank you so much. I think what's so cool about this panel is that you all have this happy gene, which I know Tia's going to talk a little bit more about, but from completely different experiences. And I wanted to start off by asking one question to all of you, and that is, what does happiness mean to you? And Tia, I'll start with you.
I'll make it short and sweet. To me, happiness means a commitment to joy and to living a life of purpose and accepting the peaks and valleys of life.
That's beautifully put by somebody that kind of knows what she's talking about. Andy, what about you?
Again, taking off of what Tia just said, it's the joy of helping others. It's the joy of a smile on a child's face that couldn't have a smile there before. It's the joy of someone that's overcome some really difficult aspects of their life, to have joy themselves and to give you that joy. It's the working back and forth. And I always say you get so much more out of giving than the person receives. You get so much more back. I think that's the definition of joy that most people see.
I couldn't agree more. And though I don't measure up to like a fraction of everything you've done, these TL talks that, have a purpose of sending out positive energy. And people think, Tina, how do you have so much positive energy every week? And it's because it comes back 500 times over. I don't know. It's a weird formula there, but Tia can explain later. Patrick, tell us about what's happiness to you. And I'm sure it has to do with pain, because every expedition you talk about is like you're in massive pain. So how does that work?
I was going to say, happiness as a polar explorer kind of means that you've got all your toes, which I do. So I'm kind of like, maybe it's as simple as that. Happy. It's a tough one. I love what Andy said because of what you do. You're looking up to 15,000 children. If I said happiness is a smile on a child's face, it would sound incredibly trite. What you do makes it entirely worthwhile and true. I don't know. I think happiness is an individual thing, but I think that it is to do with finding a meaning in your life. And that may be in whatever it may be, but everyone's got a different purpose. Everyone's got a different way. And I think that if you find your true meaning and you follow that call and you follow that vocation, that's happiness.
Very true.
And having all your toes. That's my
I'm always going to remember you just put your foot up on the screen.
Yeah, that's what happens. But I have showers.
Yeah, that is a plus. That is a plus. So Tia, I'm going to start with you. And when we first talked about this conversation, this talk, I was very much interested in learning about the science of happiness, because very often when you talk about happiness, it's a bit of a fluffy subject. It's like, oh, I'm a happy person, and oh, how sweet and how superficial. But there is truly a science behind it. And I was thrilled to hear about Happy Genes. And I love the name of that. So can you talk to us a little bit about what's behind all this?
Sure. So in the late 90s, the president of the American Psychology Association saw something wrong with the profession and with all the research. And that was that the focus of the research of thousands of psychologists around the globe was the focus was on really unhappy people, people with depression and bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. And not that all of that research wasn't extremely important and valuable and strides had been made. But Dr. Martin Seligman said, what if we start studying really, really happy people and take that information and share it with as many people as possible? So that was sort of the official birth of the science of happiness, or positive psychology. And so since then, there's been so much research and, building blocks in what actually makes people happy. And to your question about the happy genes, genetics does play a part. Like Tina, I think you and I definitely received happy genes from our ancestors. If it was great uncle or whoever, we got some of those genes, right? And genetics does play a part, just like the color of our hair, right? It contributes to our personality. Our life circumstances play a small part, where we live, what we do, etc. But why I am obsessed with the science of happiness and why I'm on a mission to teach this information to as many people as possible is that our daily choices, we make thousands of choices every single day, and there are choices that can increase our happiness. There are also choices we can make as human beings that decrease our well-being. And so the science is really the study of what are the different strategies, what are the different behaviors, what are the habits, what are the rituals, what are the choices that increase our happiness. And so, of course, it's a lifelong journey. It's a personal, it's not like there's this one prescription for all 7 billion people. But there are many, many ways that we can increase our happiness. And also, the science of happiness is not about feeling happy all the time, right? Joyful or in love or excited or amused. The science of happiness is also about stress and resilience and sadness and anger. And, how do we build resilience? How do we have a toolbox just like your immune system? Right? We exercise, we eat good foods to stay strong physically. How can we stay strong psychologically as well? So it's about the dark and the light sides of life.
Wow. No, it's amazing. And I think that is so important because very often we can just, justify and say, well, I'm kind of a glass half empty. Therefore, I'm accustomed to that. And yet you can choose to exercise these important skills and talents and make a choice every morning. So I think what you do is brilliant. And I think everybody needs that. And it's such an important ingredient in life.
Oh, thank you.
Andy, I studied a little bit. I have a team that goes back and starts to look at all of your guys' past interviews, and we've been studying and doing all of our research. And you had an amazing interview with CNN. And at the end, you say, I have the very incredible feeling of knowing what I do, what I was put here to do, and the ability to do it. There is magic in the world. You can, with just a little bit, make more of a difference than you can possibly imagine. And I think that what you do is an example of that. And I'd love for you to share a little bit of your story because, how did you get to do what you're doing and how does it all work?
Sure. I always introduce myself as a recovering banker, which always gets a little laugh, mostly from bankers. But I was an investment banker, Wall Street, Chase and its predecessor institutions. I financed roads, bridges, tunnels, ports, airports, and hotels all over the world, which is how I got to meet Mark at Auberge. I think there's a couple of his hotels. But my passion, I should say I'm a magician, my passion's always been working with kids. So every country I'd go to, I'd tell the country manager, if you want me to come to your country and pitch business, you had to find me an orphanage, 2 hours in the schedule, and we play with the kids. I make balloons, I do magic tricks, I help them with their homework. And I went to this one orphanage in Santiago, Chile, 20 years ago. And it was a home for some of the most battered and abused young women in the country that were put in this one orphanage. And I was a little nervous going in, and I went in, and they were the most loving, hopeful, happy kids you had ever met. And it was such a dichotomy to me, knowing some of the background of these kids and the fact that they still had this positive outlook on life. You talk about peaks and valleys of happiness, that it was just beyond inspirational. But then the nuns came to me in the third time back and they said, look, Tio Mago, the magician, the girls love you. They can't wait for their Tio to come back, but I'm not sure if you know what happens here. At the age of 18, by law, these girls are considered adults and they have to leave the orphanage. Within a year, 100% of the young flowers you see here will become prostitutes or live on the streets. That was my aha moment. I went back to New York. I blackmailed the law firm that made most money the year before, had them set up a 501c3, and together with friends, family, and clients, raised enough money to build a state-of-the-art computer center within the orphanage. And it was magic. The young kids became the top of their class. The older girls learned how to use Microsoft Office. They had a skill. And I have a lot of statistics that I'm not going to bore your listeners with. But my favorite is that in now almost 20 years, only one girl's gone to the streets. They go La Mala. Every other girl's gone on to university or gotten a full or part-time job. Well, that was the beginning of the trek. Then I went to Brazil, then I went to Panama, then I went to Mexico. And then I started taking over my life. When I got to be 50% of my life, about 15 years ago, I gave up professional banking and became a consultant. And then 10 years ago, kind of as part of that statement, I gave up money altogether and decided that this was my calling in life. And I've never regretted it since. I think in that same piece on CNN, I talk about the only thing I miss are some of the toys of wealth, which are nice, don't get me wrong. But the joy that you get from these children, and as you said, visit every one of them as much as possible. It's been a little more difficult during COVID, but I had to get out there. These kids are so full of hope and energy and resilience. And that's something I'll go back to during this call many, many times. The lessons they can teach all of us about going through something difficult like we've gone through in COVID and knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel, knowing that there is happiness that will, if you look for it, will be out there in the future, is just an incredible driving force.
Amazing. And, I think it's more about hope. I think sometimes we need to put things in perspective, right? And this example of the children is so key. And I think when you talk about helping, it's come up already on our past talks, but a lot of people right now, if we look at, some statistics that say that by the end of the year, 50% of the travel community is going to be unemployed. I mean, that's scary. That's a lot of people feeling lost and confused and, and all this and looking for pivoting and so forth. And they have vacuums in their life. And a lot of people say, how do I fill this hole? Because I don't know what to do. And it sounds, but help somebody, give.
Yeah.
The more you give, the quicker you're going to feel full and joyful, and you're going to be able to look at life in a much more positive way. It sounds weird because you feel empty, and the way to fill yourself is to give.
Yeah.
And indulge your passion.
Right? Yeah.
My passion's kids and education, and that's great. But if your passion's the environment, or if your passion is alleviating poverty, there are so many opportunities. I mean, I think we give a great window for what we do, but you can have so many windows that you can help others. And you have so many talents. Whatever you think you don't have, you have. And you have so much talent that you can give to others and really inspire them and give them the tools that they need to succeed. And it's within every one of us.
Yeah. And I'll say, Tina, just to say, because I always think of the science behind it, all of the studies show that when you do give, of course, it's the right thing to do, as help. And that's what the world needs now more than ever, is it does make you happier. And the Dalai Lama, one of the probably, most famous people in terms of human happiness, is he says the majority of human suffering comes because humans think too much about themselves. So the second we turn and start helping the environment or animals or people, it's going to fill you up and like you said, give perspective.
No, it's amazing. Patrick, you wrote a book called The Misadventures in the White Desert. And, I already bought it. It hasn't come to the Turks and Caicos, but I will read it. And the summary of it is the story of how Patrick and two other friends set out to ski in the South Pole. Despite forgetting their skis, they managed to cross 1,100 kilometers of forbidding Antarctic interior, in doing so becoming the youngest and fastest team ever to reach 90 degrees south. And all of this with the help of some very large kites, battling egos, exhaustion, and the fear of peeing in minus 55 degrees. The team fought their way across the ice, following in the footsteps of their heroes. Patrick's story gets down to the bare bones of polar exploration. But essentially, it's about three friends keeping it together in the harshest environment on Earth. And when you think, the nice thing is when I was reading the reviews, it's all talks about how happy you are. And yet, when I talk to you about that, you're saying how much pain you felt. So how does it connect? How, you're a joyful person and you have this, love with limits, which is a lot of hardship. How does that work? And maybe then TL throw in the science behind it.
Yeah, God, the science someone needs to explain to me, because I don't understand myself. But I mean, listening to Andy and Tia about altruism and the happiness you get from giving and looking externally, it's kind of the antithesis of what we do as polar explorers, where it's a highly selfish pursuit. It genuinely is. It's an entirely introverted pursuit. And we talked earlier about you think you're sort of macho skiing off into the distance. What really happens is you sit with your hood up like this in minus 35 degrees for 12 hours a day, pulling the equivalent of 100 kilos or 220 pounds, whatever it is, behind you for 80 days. It's kind of insular. It's kind of like there's no one to talk to. It's the same song goes through your head for hours and hours and hours every single day. There's an inert environment around you. So it's not like you're going through Africa. So, there's a leopard, there's a something. This is just white, sheet white and blue sky, and that's it. So there's nothing to trigger a thought. So kind of a meditation, you're 12 hours sort of meditating, but at the same time, perpetually uncomfortable or cold or hungry or in pain or blisters. So you've got to get through that. It's a really big mental exercise. Actually, skiing to the pole is probably like 30% physical and 70% mental. It's a longevity, and actually it's the antithesis of being macho. You're literally like sitting in a tent, darning your socks each night, like chatting to your friends, and it's all about sort of preserving your body rather than kind of like, macholy thrusting through and kind of, nailing it. It's, you've got to keep a lot for the end. And at the end, we actually skied for 42 hours nonstop to reach the pole at the very, very end, because we knew we had enough left in the gas tank to just kind of blitz it in one go. And that was where you hilariously arrive at the South Pole. You've been trying to get there all this time, and you go like, that's the South Pole. Great. I think I'm going to set the tent up and go to sleep, like, woohoo, like this. And you get into your sleep bag like that. It's like, hey. So it's very much the journey. And it's the South Pole itself is a surreal point on Earth, that there's no more south, east, or west. The only direction is north. You can walk around the world in a couple of paces and all of those kind of surreal things, but it's abstract. It's not the summit of Everest has got a really good view. The South Pole looks kind of exactly like the other 1,000 kilometers you just did. So it's off the American Stein station. So kind of notion of achievement. Yeah.
Amazing. And what I love about that story and how you tell it, it talks a little bit about the energy or the thrill that comes out of travel, of an exploration, and maybe not to that degree of madness, but to any degree of going somewhere to explore and to meet people and to see something different. And I think that's where there is security in the thought that, of course, travel will come back, because there are crazy people like you that need to cross and hit the limit of the earth. But there's a lot of normal people like us that just want us to get a peek. I don't need to feel the pain. And thank God you put it together.
It's also talking about altruism on a microcosm. Like Andy's, looking after 15,000 orphans. What's interesting is, like, when you're with a teammate, it's very interesting because it is life or death. And it is, there's a guy next to you who's, over all this time, he's suffering too. And it's the tiny little things, like it's the guy that gets out of the tent in the storm and digs out the tent. Neither of you want to get out and do it. You're freezing, you're bone tired, and you're exhausted. but you get out and do it. And there's little moments of bravery or little moments of compassion where that guy's run out of food and you're starving yourself. You know, we're eating 4,000 calories and we're burning like near a 9 or 10. So you're starving, but you give them a little bit of your food, or you take a bit of weight off the sled. And that little bit of compassion, that little bit of altruism, giving to a teammate and vice versa, because you know, just down the line, 4 or 5 days later, I'm going to be the one having a bad day and everyone has them and he'll take the weight out of my sled. So there's an enormous amount of tolerance you learn. And that's a really big, important lesson when you're on the tube in London with people like this up against you going to work and the whole thing. You're trying to bring back that essence of tolerance for your fellow man is an important thing.
What I love about your story, and it's like I teach it all the time, is that it's not about the destination, right? As human beings, we're trying to achieve this or get here or do this. And in the daily, in the journey with your team, right? Whether it's your family, whether it's the team you're working with in the orphanage, Tina, like you're amazing, you know, the group of women around the world. It's not necessarily about getting to some certain point, right? It's about the journey, and that's really what life is, right? It's in the daily.
The South Pole is the absolute, you know, epitome of an abstract, weird goal, which you spend so much energy trying to get to, and when you get there, you're like, okay, well, you know, okay, that's great. It's you know, Wilfred Thesiger said it's not the goal that counts, but the journey, and the harder the journey, the better the better the goal. And he was a famous sort of old school British explorer who was out in the Arabian sands in the deserts, in a hot desert. But it's very true. Very, very true. There's something about human suffering to reach somewhere a little bit. You know, you can't have anything too easy. You know, like you know, if you go and see a black rhino in Africa, you know, you gotta look for it. And you know, if you drive in a truck, there's a black rhino. It's not special. You know, you've got to have that slight moments of jeopardy and adventure and struggle to go and to do something worthwhile.
And I think that has so much to do with what we're living today, you know, and in so many of the past TL talks, I started saying, I would ask the invitees, I hate to say panelists, but the other guests on the panel to say, what if, you know, if I bumped into you 2 years from now, what would you say about 2020? You know, so try to think about what you're going to accomplish, because there is a sense of like, oh, hardship right now, suffering. You know, I hate this. I want to get out of here. This is uncomfortable. I like life as it is normal. But I think to a very minor degree compared to your suffering, but, you know, it squeezes you to actually produce and be able to do things you never thought you could do. And look at, you know, what do I really like and who am I? And going back to what Andy said, you know, finding out what's your real passion. And this is the time to allow that to happen. Right? To allow yourself to be uncomfortable.
Also, now's a really good time to get perspective, right? Get perspective. I think, again, what I get from these kids is so much perspective you can't believe. And I always tell a story when I was a banker and I was doing this on the side at that point. And I went to Haiti, to one of the most beautiful orphanages I know. And these kids are absolutely amazing and so full of love, and they have nothing. And I gave them their first ice cream ever. And if you ever saw a kid eat his first ice cream cone in his life, you've never seen such joy. And it just incredible joy. Then I flew back to New York, and it was bonus season at the bank. And there was a guy in his office crying. And I looked at him and I said, oh my God, did someone die? And what happened? He goes, no, my bonus wasn't what I expected it to be. And he was literally in tears. And the dichotomy between those two things, I left formal banking shortly thereafter, but the dichotomy between how happy these kids were with nothing, and this guy who didn't get $500,000 and only got $250,000, just literally despondent and thinking he's never going to get over it. It just shows you about perspective. Understand, in this time, look, I always tell people, your pain is valid. What you're going through right now is so valid. But perspective that there are people going through a hell of a lot worse, that have gone through a lot worse, and can honestly kind of tell you that it does get better on the other side.
Yeah, one of my questions I had to actually ask you was that, you know, how do you compare? Because on one side, when you look at the financial atmosphere, let's say, it's all about toys, right? It's all about which toys do you have, and it's all this thing. And you moved from that to giving and, being generous. And my question was actually about that. How does happiness weigh in these two environments? Because one is a constant struggle by a means that ends up, and people tend to know this, it's empty. There's a very short-lived gratitude, I guess. And the other one is the opposite, right?
But it's fighting society a little bit. And Tia can talk about this as well, because again, how I was raised and how my environment, I spent my whole life in banking. It's all about going after the almighty dollar. It's how much money do you have? What are your toys? How big's your house? What kind of car do you drive? And you get a lot of your worth from that. And I won't lie, it was not the easiest of transitions. Everyone wants to think it was like I happily just jumped away from money and jumped into this. No, there's a transition period where you have to understand that you're giving up something to get something. But I can tell you that the joy I get could never be matched by a big bonus or a big house or a big car. These kids, they're so full of love. My WhatsApp blows up every morning with, I love you, Tio. I love you, Papa. I love you, Daddy. I miss you. Please come back. I wasn't getting that from my boss in banking. So,
really? You were getting that from your banking boss?
I was
that's a harassment charge right there.
Exactly.
So did he give you lots of ice cream at least?
Golden bars of ice cream.
He was eating it. But honestly, I think you have, at least, especially during these times, because people are going through it. You can't downplay the difficulty people are going through. People are losing their jobs. People are looking for food. There's all kinds of things. And I know several who are going through some very bad times. But I think, when we talk, it's about perspective. It's about the ability to understand that you will get through whatever you're going through. And if it helps, helping others will help get you through it faster.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's very true. And Tia, there is a need right now more than ever. And when I thought about this idea of doing these TL talks to send out positive energy, I didn't think much of it. To be honest, I just thought I've got a bunch of this energy and I think people need it. So I'm going to channel it somewhere because, the people around me can't take it anymore. It's just too much, So I thought I'll just channel it to other people. And everybody's like, yeah, go do that. That's great. Go send that to somebody else. So I never thought it would be, 50,000 views. That never occurred to me. It wasn't part of but there is a thirst. There's a hunger for it. I get emails saying, please don't stop. I need that Friday vitamin, whatever you do. And, at the bottom line, I'm like, this is not what I do. I have a company. There's, and they say, well, what's your commercial model? It's like, commercial model? I don't know. I just thought I'd get some cool people together and talk about fun stuff and send out energy. There is nothing else in that. But this thirst and this hunger for it, this need for it became very clear to me. And I feel it on a weekly basis when we do these talks. But I have a feeling it's not something momentarily. It's not because of, maybe there is a stronger need for it right now because we are living a very unique situation. But it is something that I think is always there, right? If you can ask anybody, what would they like if they could have one wish, happiness is usually right up there.
Yeah, I mean, as long as your human needs are met, if you're struggling for food or you don't have shelter, you're not thinking about happiness, right? You're thinking Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You need to have your basic needs met. But once you are one of the blessed people that have all their needs met, you want happiness. And also you want the people that you love and that you care about, to feel happy. And although there's a lot of forces coming at us, with negative information, the news and social media and politics and all of it, right? We're being bombarded. And unfortunately, it's 24/7 because of our smartphones and just technology the way it is, that humans are craving lightness and wanting hope and wanting connection. That's obviously why the physical distancing is so hard. But this need for bringing people together and for putting out, you're putting out an energy. And we said on an earlier call when we were talking, energy is contagious, both negative and positive, right? And it happens through social media. It happens in person, in all the ways that humans connect. We influence each other. And more people around the world need to be doing what you're doing because there's 7 billion people, right? We affect each other, right? There's this connectivity, even though we might feel physically isolated, even though we might feel alone, we are all connected, right? And so I absolutely think that the thirst, the desire for positivity and for optimism and for hope and for goodness, for goodness, that it will continue, and it's going to continue to be extremely important that as much as we can do our little part to lift other people up. The ripple effect is absolutely real.
And I know it doesn't exist. Everybody wants to have a shortcut, right? Tell me like 3 quick things to be happy. What would you say? I know that's not the way we should look at this, but if you had 3 recommendations or 5, like if you're not a happy person, feel happy genes, try doing these things in the morning. Is such a formula exist?
Okay, so no, there isn't like a like a diet, like do these 3 things and you're
guaranteed. I was hoping we'd like involve.
I know, I was waiting for that.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So there are many. Okay, I'll give 5 that I recommend to everyone, but I want to also say that it's an ongoing, and depending on what's going on in your life, right? So if you lose a job, you lose a loved one, depending on what's going on, you need to change and shift, and it's this ever-going journey. Talk about the journey to Iceland, right? The journey of life. It's like, to the South Pole. So if I were to just say 5, unhappy person came to me and said, I'm unhappy. So the 5 right off the bat is I would say sleep at a minimum 7 hours a night. Like anything less than 7, you're trying to be happy, you got to start there. Movement. If you are not moving at least 4 times a week, you don't have to be doing 12-hour treks, pulling whatever you're pulling. If you're just doing 25 minutes of walking, whatever. If you're not moving, it's the same as waking up and taking a depressant pill. The antidepressant industry is multi-billion, trillion probably. Studies have shown exercise basically does the same thing. Eating nutritious food. If there's talk about in the wealthy nations, the food we eat can make us unhappy. So making sure you have healthy food. Call it meditation, call it stillness, call it presence. Basically just pausing, right? We're a society of like go. We need to pause to just be still with our thoughts. 12 hours sounds amazing. The Dalai Lama meditates like 5 hours a day. A lot of us don't have that time. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes of mindfulness, right? Just calming yourself. And then the 5th is spending time with the people you care about and who care about you. The happiest countries on earth are the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway, Denmark. They spend time with their friends and family pretty much 7 days a week. Also in South America, they skew really happy. They spend a lot of time with their family. In countries like the United States, it's not that much when you look at the hours per week, right? And right now, of course, we have to do it over Zoom or FaceTime, but it's making the people that you care about, whether that's 3 people, whether that's 15 people, making that a priority, because human connection is the #1 predictor of happiness.
Nice. Those are good tips.
Good tips.
Easy. Very good tips.
I was going to go into, you said about energy, and that just sort of struck how we're all affecting each other with the energy we give off, negative or positive.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew the guy from Antarctica would tell a story about ice? But when I was down there, this astronaut, we were sort of talking together, and she goes, yeah, do you know that if you like have a water in a bowl and then you have an angry person next to it, when it is freezing, this crystalline structure of it will freeze in a different way too if you have someone meditating next to it or someone joyful. Different energies that the human beings are giving off will actually affect the way that water is freezing. And I was like, nah, come on, that's not true. And apparently it's true. So I'm not going to say this empirical fact, but that's what I got told by an astronaut. So I'm going to say that's completely true.
It's true. No, it's true. And on the travel space, we're going to have Sonu eventually, because he's a good friend. He's the founder of Soneva Resorts. He's a fantastic guy. And his properties, he has water, there's a big movement of water that he plays music to. And so the water that you drink when you're on property is the water that has special crystals. So you get your bottle of water, which is glass, and it'll have crystals to make sure. And he plays classical music to it, because exactly that. The water will vibrate the energy and it will affect your body if it's a happy water or not. And so it's crazy, but
so our water that we drink with in Antarctica is basically about 100,000-year-old glacial ice that's been compressed over about it's just unbelievably a long time. Very bit. So the ice is like compressed, and when you put it in like your glass, it takes ages to turn to water. It's like I have been in this solid state for so long, I am not coming out, and it just takes so long, and it's a crazy like iridescent blue color. And we did a blind taste of all the sort of brand names of Evian, all those kinds of things, and every person chose the Antarctic water. It's just like this purest, craziest, beautiful water. Anyway, there you go.
It's awesome.
It's true. No, it's amazing. I want to, I think we've all been affected in some way by the COVID situation, and I'm sure that all the efforts, Andy, that you're doing. And I think one of the most amazing things that you do is that when you talk about the Orphaned Starfish Foundation, you say you commit for life. That's a long time. You're not there until they're 18 or they're 30. You're committed for life, and it's a big project. 15,000 children and growing for life, big project. And I'm sure that it requires funding and all this. And I understand that you have a gala that is probably one of the most important events. And I'm sure that was affected by COVID. And I know it's coming up next week. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to talk about how COVID's affected our kids. And it's affected them in three ways. First, they were very concerned they weren't going to get the computer education that we give them. And we thankfully were able to fully fund every single program for the entire year. So every teacher kept their salary, every student kept taking their classes. The second was an even bigger surprise is that governments and other funders cut funding for basic necessities. So we got the first call from Peru, and then program after program saying, look, we have no money for food, we have no money for PPE, we have no money for necessities. So we jumped into action, raised money, and now I have 2,500 families in 24 countries that are being fed, given necessities and given PPE. But the other one was we talk about happiness is with happiness. Then I'll talk about the gala. Is the kids came to us and they said, look, Tio Andy, we feel very alone. We've been stuck in our orphanage for 6 months. We haven't left. No one knows us. No one knows we're here. So we jumped into action. We started these "You Are Not Alone" calls. And we had 20-something calls where we got all the kids on the line. I got on the line and some of the other supporters of the foundation got on the line. And then we got celebrities. We had the Nala from Lion King sing to the orphans in Ethiopia. We had someone from Wicked sing for the kids in Colombia. We had the star of The Affair acting to the kids in Minnesota. So it was just incredible, heartwarming. Everyone started very sad and kind of alone. And then by the end, it was this joy and laughter and telling stories. And we felt a part of one. So the title of our gala is called "You Are Not Alone." And our galas historically have been in person, where it's not my favorite day of the year. It's at Cipriani Wall Street every year, the same Friday in October. People fly up all over. We fly the kids in. So we could have just been depressed. And our galas are always festive and happy. And it's not the flies buzzing around a kid's head. It's happy kids who have been given the opportunity to succeed. So this year it's called "You're Not Alone." It's going to be virtual. It's next Friday night. OSF.org. I'll send it out to everybody. But more importantly, Lemons to Lemonade. We've only been able to have 10 or so kids perform and talk about their lives at the gala. Well, now we have performances from kids all over the world. And they're so happy to kind of tell their stories, to talk about how this has affected them, and to show their performances, and it blows people away. Also, we've only been able to have 1 or 2 performers at our galas. Our gala is like the Grammys. We have 20 plus Broadway stars doing 2 different numbers for Broadway. We have Stephen Schwartz performing something from Godspell. We have my friend who's the lead singer of the band, Asia, is performing with singers from Foreigner, Styx, Journey, etc. We're honoring Sam Moore, the guy who's Soul Man. We have Erica Ender, Victor Drija, Skip Marley. I mean, it is literally like a Grammy show, interspersed with these kids performing and talking about the difference that we've made in their lives. It's going to be magical. OSF.org, Orphaned, Starfish, OSF. But it really, I thank you because it does raise, we were nervous because it's about 70% of our operating income is raised at this one event every year. and people have been incredibly generous, so that there still are tickets and tables left, but not many. So blessed, hopefully you'll be there. You know you're getting an invitation from me. And I'm so excited for you to see how many people came out in support of these kids. And then on the flip side, how appreciative these kids are for the opportunities they're being given.
That's beautiful. No, and it's so important to support and to help. And again, it's the easy. It's funny because if you support with money, it's nice, it's important, but very often you don't get that, that reward, that feeling. And it's again, it's what we're able to do right now. And I'm happy that you were able to share that. And I hope that everybody can support it. But it is about getting as involved as you can to feel that energy back. Just little things. Whenever Christmas and we're going to give presents to a number of employees that we live in a building, and I always make sure that my daughter delivers them. If you're going to give a present, go and give it. And that she always comes back and says, "Mom, it's so much nicer to give than to receive the energy." And I said, "Good, that's the point. You have to realize and feel it." Yeah, it's a lesson you have to learn and you have to feel. But I do hope that everybody listening in will help and support in any way they can, because it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask. So Patrick, after you did all of these wild expeditions, at some point you thought, wouldn't it be nice if more people could do this in a lighter version? And that's how it is. And I understand that's when you started to plant the seed of the White Desert, which is by far the coolest product I have ever seen. I mean, honestly, you took the painful experience into the glamour of, expeditions. So how does that, did you think, I want to give people a little bit of this feeling and this experience, and tell us a little bit about how that, how the pain came into glamour.
Pain came into glamour. Wow. Okay. So the actual truth is we were literally sitting in a storm, waiting it out, kind of like we're all doing now with COVID, and we were dreaming of a wonderful place. We were thinking, wouldn't it be amazing to have like an African safari lodge style, amazing beds and amazing food. But imagine that in the interior of Antarctica, because when we went there, the only way you could get in was like a big Russian cargo plane, or most people went on the periphery on the cruise ships, which is great, but you're on the peninsula, you're over there. And I wanted people to come and see the actual interior. Now, I've made it sound like hell on earth on our expeditions, and frankly, it can be like hell on earth. But the stuff on the coast, the stuff not on the high polar plateau where it's 3,000 meters high and minus 30, where our camp is like minus 5 degrees, and it's warm and it's beautiful, and there's waterfalls and iridescent ice tunnels and emperor penguins, and it's staggeringly beautiful. So we basically thought, would there be a way that we could fly people in and they get this sense of what we're seeing here? Because what we're seeing, only polar explorers and the odd scientists were getting this. And so we set up this company, White Desert. It's been going 15 years. And we fly people in from Cape Town on a Gulfstream. They land, and then they get to see Antarctica for 8 days, but the deep interior of Antarctica. And it's one of those things. It's like if you haven't seen the sea before, trying to explain what the ocean looks like to somebody, to a landlocked Zimbabwean. It's a seventh continent that so few people get to see, and it's mind-blowingly beautiful. And that's, again, you talk about altruism, and I know this isn't a commercial sense, but the joy I get from, we open the door, the guys who have been everywhere, done everything, they get just their jaw drops. Right in front of our runway even is a 1,000 meter spire of rock that just comes out the ground like a tooth. And it's like, that's the first thing they see. So it's just this absolute wonder and joy that people get from doing something like that. And that's really that's the essence of travel, right? That's where you get shaken out of your whole world, your boardroom, everything about it, and suddenly you're being put in a completely different environment that inspires you. And I'm so lucky that Antarctica does all the work for us. We just get people there. It's a beautiful place and you can feel happy there.
That's
phenomenal.
Yeah, I think everyone, and I have to share that when I mentioned and I put this panel together, I loved Andy's, when he saw that you were on the panel, he's like, "What? White Desert? How cool!" Because you do have
made,
that sense.
I'll throw out there. I made a balloon animal on every continent on Earth for a kid. The altruism of bringing me and one of the kids to Antarctica would be an incredible thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, now I'm getting
Really
the guilt.
happy. It could make you really happy.
Hey, let's just do 15,000 children at the same time. Come on, we'll do it. We'll do it on that.
I'm in. You'll need the cargo plane for that, but that's all right.
Well, a lot of scientists nearby, they do those weather balloons for scientific experiments. So maybe you could just turn one sword or whatever it might be. That'd be good. It's something that Tia was talking about as well, and it's the smartphones and the technology, and people are very, very connected all the time. And what is very interesting when we have these people come to our camps is that there's no internet, so
That's
suddenly they're really disconnected. A lot of these people are either very busy or very powerful, and they usually have 2,000 people saying to them, "Tell me, how do I do this?" All these decisions they have to make. So there's an Arabic proverb which is freedom is absence of choice. And I love the idea that they kind of, we actually have this sort of regression. They come and they kind of go, I don't care, just what do I want to do today? And you go, well, we should do the ice tunnels, and then we should go and do this. And they're like, that sounds great, let's go. And this disconnect from all the clutter in their lives, all the decision-making processes, just being able to breathe and have space. And I know that lots of people, and I know that COVID it's a very tough time. We've all voiced that. At the same time, Andy made a really good point. You can either be paralyzed by it and you can be this downward trajectory, or you can kind of go, shit, okay, I'm just gonna reassess. And maybe that the job I was doing wasn't quite right, or maybe this wasn't quite right. I've got space now to actually just take a breath and have a look before I leap next time. So as hellish as it is, maybe it's a blessing, but we just don't know it yet. And I don't know. That's a thought I wanted to put out there.
I'm glad you said it, because everything in life, every day, you have a choice of your perspective, right? You really choose, like, I've lost my job, which is obviously not what anybody wants. And you can think that, okay, I'm on this really bad trajectory for the next 12 to 24 months and all of these things are going to happen. Or, wow, I've just been given a gift where I can actually reassess, reevaluate, and maybe get on the path, like exactly what you guys said, of a life like full of purpose and full of meaning that I'm in charge of, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's really
and when the storm is raging, that's a really, really hard thing to appreciate. And it takes inner courage, bravery, all those things. You've got to delve really deep, and some of it's kind of murky and nasty and painful, and well, a lot of it is. But I think that I guess the last bit is about self-reliance, right? The nice thing about doing, I guess, polar trips is at some point you are there standing alone, and you're the only person who's going to figure out how to keep going or stay warm, whatever it is. And there's a sense of true reliance in oneself. And I think that is a stunningly important thing. It's just so much easier to blame other people, and that wasn't my fault, and that wasn't this, and that blame anything you like. But the reality is that ain't going to really get you anywhere. And we all know it deep down, but it's just something that's easier to do. And this gives, I guess, a time for people just to breathe and then hopefully make a better choice, as you say, Tia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think what Andy said also, it's not necessarily easy. When you talked about, Andy, your transition from the financial world to this orphanage world and of giving, it seems, oh, that's so nice. So as you mentioned, there's actually a question that we've received from one of our audience. His name is Happy Dunas. I don't know if you know him, but he's definitely in the right place. He said he'd like to know, Andy, did your family, did they jump on board when you made this movement to living a simpler, more generous life?
That's a very personal question. So my sons, I'll answer it in the positive and the negative. In the positive, my two sons embrace it, have always embraced it. Since they were 10 years old, they've never gone on a vacation that didn't include an orphan. So we visit an orphanage and then go skiing. We visit an orphanage and then go to the beach. So they've been my closest friends through all this. They embrace it. They take at least 2 weeks out of every year and go with me to orphanages and all of that. But I am divorced, so that part didn't make it through. So like you said, there are trade-offs, and I think Tia, you said it as well. There's peaks and valleys, and none of it comes without cost. But I can tell you that it is, again, never regret anything. And my kids, especially, knowing that, maybe dad wasn't going to give them any $zillion inheritance, could have been anger, it could have been mad, it could have been anything. And they were unbelievably supportive. And they've told me that some of the best times we've had together have been at the orphanages with the kids.
That's lovely. And I have to correct myself. Happy Dumas is she, not he. So I apologize. It's a question from a lady.
I might have jumped to my conclusion, but we'll go with that.
Yeah. So I always end these talks with this in the same manner, right? Which is, if everybody that's listening to us were to forget all of our stories, would be so sad. But if they were to forget all of our content, and you wanted to give them one last message to hold on to through the weekend and beyond, what would that message be? And maybe, Tia, I'll start with you.
My message would be to accept that, the challenges you're going through, and don't try and hide them or push them away, but honor whatever you're going through, and to also prioritize and focus on your own happiness. Make sure it's a priority, because it's going to positively affect, just like Tina, when you lift yourself up, you can lift other people. And then the last part, so I guess it's 3 mini messages, is just the reminder that when you are feeling unhappy, right, to go out that altruistic piece of thinking about others, or could be an orphanage, could be a, excuse me, an animal shelter, however you can do to help. And to know that there's always light at the other end. Nothing stays the same forever.
It's so true. And I have to go back to this recording and write down those 5 points that you mentioned, which are key as well, and have so much wisdom in them. Patrick, what's your last message?
Yeah, Tia kind of got all of it there, didn't she? So no, I'm kidding. I think the last bit is to reiterate the message of self-reliance. And I think that the thing I'd say there is, just don't underestimate yourself. You may be down, you may be having a hard time, you may be sad, and all of those things. A lot of people, they always surprise themselves how much they've got left inside them to keep going, to take that extra step. And that's really what you've got to do if you're feeling down, and get yourself in the right way.
Beautiful. No, it's true. And you're the man to be able to know that, to have that wisdom to share. So, and I'm sure that reading your book will help. So I'm definitely going to go out, read his book.
And always take care of your toes. That's my other top tip.
Keep the toes.
Keep the toes. Andy, take it home. Let us know, what's your message for the week?
Know that whatever you're going through is valid, but that keeping it in perspective is probably the most important thing. Learn from the young men and young women and boys and girls that I see all over the world that have been honestly through much more than what you're going through right now, that have all shown this resilience, that have all shown this ability to know that there are people out there that care for them, and there's people out there that care for you. And that will drive you to know that there is, as Tia says, light at the end of the tunnel. And since she did a mini one, I'll do a mini one. Following your passion, whatever that passion is going to be one of your keys. I would put it as number 6 on her list. Knowing what you love and knowing what you love to do and finding a way to do that will keep you happy every day of your life.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the biggest luxury in life, is being able to find out what it is, what's your meaning and what's your passion. Because as they say, you don't work a day in your life. And I have that, very, very grateful for that. And I think all of us here share that ability to say we do what we love to do. And so I wanted to thank all of you. I think just being able to share each one of your wisdom and what you're doing. And Andy, amazing. Thank you for your choices in life. I think we all are better off because you made that choice, even though it came with some harsh spaces in life.
I'll interrupt this. Thank you for giving our kids a voice. That's something we try to do all the time. And for you having me on and giving the kids that we serve a voice is something that I'm forever in your debt. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. It's nothing. I wanted to just highlight, I have been started to do these talks 1 week yes and 1 week no. And people have been writing me like, did it stop? What happened? And I said, no, I just, I have other projects that I have to work with, but we have a next TL talk on the 30th of October, which is fantastic. Its topic is travel from frivolous to meaningful. We have Richard Bailey, chairman and CEO of Pacific Beachcombers. He was the owner of the Brando. Jake Hoppard, who's the co-founder of the Transformational Travel Council, which is an amazing, amazing initiative. And Kostas Christ, who's the president of Beyond Green Travel, who is an icon when you talk about sustainability. So it's going to be a great talk. Again, Patrick, Tia, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. These talks are always available on demand. So if you want to share it with somebody, please do, because it is a force of positive energy. And I'm so happy to be able to say that. And thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend. And I hope to see you guys again in person.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tina. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Our hardest times often lead to our greatest moments, remembering that adversity brings people together.
While no one chooses to go through this kind of stress and anxiety, there will be things that come out of it and opportunities that we can't see today.
That's a powerful motivator, isn't it? To no longer take life for granted.
I define wealth by the lives that I touch. I feel like really one of the wealthiest people in our industry.
Travel is a force for good. We believe it's a connector. We believe it's vital to democracy.
That kind of stress and conflict does bring people together. A common danger unites even the bitterest of enemies.
Listen more carefully and talk less. I often fail, but when I do it, I love the results I experience.
Some people say it feels like the world has frozen, has stopped. Somehow, for some of us, it feels like it's spinning quicker than ever before.